Hello, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. So very soon I will be releasing my best books of the year, but I wanted to do a kind of honorable mention video because honestly I had too many honorable mentions for it to be a category in the best books of the year video. So I would say these are books that I just really enjoyed this year, books that I feel like I haven't talked enough about, books that I definitely want to recommend, even if they aren't my favorite of the year. First, we are going to talk about N.K. Jemisin's How Long Till Black Future Month. This is a short story anthology, and it is perfect for anybody who is a sci-fi fantasy author or speculative fiction author. I feel like this really gets the craft right. How she writes characters, how she writes stories, how she uses her interesting premises. She's just a fantastic author, and this was a fantastic collection. So many of these stories are just kernels of ideas that don't feel fully fleshed out, that don't have complete endings, but I just enjoyed the stories so much. There weren't any stories that I disliked. For a story that doesn't feel fleshed out or complete, for me to actually enjoy it, it's very rare, very rare, but I really loved these. If you love N.K. Jemisin's writing, I think you'll enjoy these. The next book we have is Locklands, which is the third and final book in the Foundryside series. I felt very good about Foundryside, really enjoyed it. It's an adult fantasy series, and the world and the characters, the plot that we are given in the first book, really excellent. Second book, a little bit of a disappointment, but that third and final book, this was it. This was a complete ending, a great finale to a series. It just was really compelling, how it dealt with characters, their internal emotions, how it dealt with consequences to actions. Everything about this finale was spot on. A perfect fantasy finale, a really well-balanced fantasy series. The next book I have is Darius the Great Is Not Okay, and this is a coming-of-age story about a young man who is dealing with depression, but mostly it's just a story about him traveling to Iran to see his grandfather and grandmother for the first time. I wouldn't say there's anything spectacular about the author's writing, but I still fell in love with it. Like, everything was just really well told, really executed well. I enjoyed my reading experience, and it made me want to pick up all the author's works. I really want to read the second book in this series as well as the other books he's written. Just really solid, really well done writing, not super fussy, but not super shallow either. It was just a perfect blend, honestly, just a really solid YA contemporary. The next book I have is Icebreakers, which is a YA coming-of-age story that takes place in a college with a group of hockey players. This honestly could end up on my most disappointing of the year because there was so much about this book that I loved. I loved the characters, I loved the arc of the main character, I loved the romance and the setting, I loved the sport aspect of this. There was so much I enjoyed, and it didn't quite meet my expectations. I didn't quite feel satisfied at the ending of this novel, but again, I fell in love with these characters. I just really liked this story. At the end of the day, I do think about this book a lot because, again, there was so much I enjoyed about it. I wish it had stuck the landing, but it was very close. The next book I have is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baltrey. This was like a 3.75 star read for me. Really excellent, fun fantasy. This is like low stakes but high emotional stakes, but it's basically like a slice of life high fantasy novel about a orc who decides to run a coffee shop in a city after being an adventurer and a rogue for a very long time. And that was it. It was simple, it was cute, it was fun, it was just really nice and cozy, and I really enjoyed it. It wasn't like the perfect read for me. There were definitely things I thought could have been expanded on, but I really enjoyed it and I would definitely recommend this. The next read I have is The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blink. This is another 3.75 stars for me, not completely perfect, but I just really loved my reading experience of this. It's pretentious, it's fussy, it's about beautiful people being beautiful people, kind of doing magic, kind of just observing each other, and so it's just kind of slow-paced and kind of mumbling and fumbling. But I loved it. I just loved just being close to these characters, watching from their eyes, watch the other five, and how it slowly circles between all the different perspectives. I'm definitely looking forward to the next book in this series. I could see why someone would slog through this, but I enjoyed it. The next book I have is Robin Hobb's Assassin's Apprentice. This first book was a really solid, fun, nostalgic almost fantasy series. It covers so many fantasy tropes in such interesting and thoughtful ways. I loved how close we were to the main character and just his internal battles and struggles. This is really just a story about this young bastard prince's son growing up in a castle and how he's kind of having to find a place for himself against the political background. And this made me fall in love with Robin Hobb's works and made me want to read all of her works. I really, really enjoyed this. The next book I have is another standout, could have been a favorite of the year for me, and that is Genderqueer, which is a graphic memoir. Personally, this wasn't my favorite drawing or coloring style, but I really connected with this memoir. It was really excellently done. It's basically just Maya talking about their gender, their sexuality, their childhood growing up, about them figuring stuff out and about not being able to figure things out, and I just really connected and enjoyed it. There was a lot in here that felt very close to home and was thus very therapeutic to read. Another standout of the year, could have been on my favorites of the year list very easily, was Ace of Spades, and this is a YA mystery thriller with a tiny sprinkle of horror in there, all set in a private school setting with our two characters who are the only two Black characters on their campus. We follow both of the main characters, one from a very wealthy background and one from a poor background who is on a scholarship, and I really enjoyed these two main characters. Chiamaka is just very much like the queen bee, queen of the school, and I just kind of loved her prissy bitchiness. And then Devin is just kind of like the soft, heartfelt boy who doesn't want to show his exterior and get hurt for it. And they just really complemented each other really, really well as friends. This deals with a lot of really difficult topics, homophobia, racism, just a lot of really scary things are happening to these kids, but it was really excellently crafted. I'm seriously looking forward to what this author has to write next. The next book I have is Winerkeep, which is a 3.75 stars for me. This, again, I don't love all of the choices that Kristen Cashore makes in her series, especially in terms with Bitter Blue, and overall I felt like I wanted more of our main character, Lovisa's story. It felt like she was starting to come into her own, but we didn't quite get to see all of the culmination of her coming into her own. But at the same time, I love Kristen Cashore's world. I love how she creates these characters. It was so nice to return to her world and that she is returning to her world. And I just like how every single character feels different from each other, but they're all growing into their own powers in different ways. This wasn't like the perfect novel. It wasn't the perfect novel in the series for me, but it was just so nice to return to this world and these characters. There's a lot to love about the Graceling Realms series. And the last book I have on this list of honorable mentions is Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. I have really, I wouldn't say enjoyed every one of her books, but I want to read every single one of her works. I just love what she does. This is like YA, maybe going into new adult, upper YA definitely, contemporary novels. The first one was a 5-star for me. I just really, really enjoyed that novel. The second one is just a really good novel. I wouldn't say I loved it because you are dealing with characters that are really messy, making really bad decisions. And likewise, this is another contemporary novel focusing on a college student who is very messy and making very messy decisions. And I love how she crafts her narratives. I love how she focuses on these really truly flawed characters and how she deals with their actions and consequences. She knows how to write a YA contemporary, and she knows how to write really good characters. And so I really, really enjoy her works. But yes, these are just some of the novels that I wanted to talk a little bit more about, give some recommendations for, some really excellent reads in here. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading.